What's going on?
Jody, what's going on?
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for making the adjustment. You know, that comes from your days as a coach and as a baller. Thank you for making the adjustment to get on here ahead of time and share with the people. Appreciate you
Oh
being here.
yeah, no problem. No problem. Look, I really believe life is all about making adjustments and monitor and adjust. So
That's right. That's right. Well, definitely appreciate you. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. We've been talking about getting you on this athlete to entrepreneur panel because you are the prime example of going from athlete to entrepreneur. And I know that I just want to pick it up right here. I'm gonna let you tell the story, but 14 years as a coach, 2 championships, and you decided to take a leap into entrepreneurship. So my question is, during that process, how did you know it was time to take the leap, and how did you know what you were going to do when you took the leap?
so the first to answer the first question as far as how did I know? I firmly believe that no matter what line of work you are in, that it should not feel like all of it should not feel the majority of it should not feel like work. Okay, there's going to be parts to your job and everything. Yes, it's paperwork. Who wants to fill out paperwork? Nobody. There's going to be little tidbits and stuff. That's going to be work, but the majority of it should not feel that way. And the 2 years prior to me getting out of coaching, there was some important stuff, aspects to my job that were starting to feel like work, and that scared me because I absolutely love basketball. I love coaching, and I love the relationships that I have with my players. And I saw a lot of coaches who were in the business forever, and they should have gotten out 20 years ago. And they were bitter. They were miserable to be around. I mean, they're just grumpy. Like we'd see them on the road in July recruiting, and they just didn't look pleasant to be around. And I did not want to become that person. So when 2015 hit, right after conference tournaments, it's Black Monday. It's usually when, coaching changes and stuff happens. And the, at the time, the head coach at Kansas had gotten fired. And I just knew that my head coach was going to end up getting the job, even though he didn't actually get it for another 6 weeks. College athletics, those jobs usually get, filled pretty quick. But he didn't get it for another 6, but I knew he was going to get it because of all of his connections with Kansas. He had won a national championship at a Division II school up there. And I just knew it. And so I had to start evaluating what I was going to do. If I could go up there with him, would I go? Was I going to go try and work for somebody else? What if he couldn't take me? What if I stayed where I was at Stephen F. Austin? And a lot of that just did not sound exciting. Like there was a weight on it. And I really don't know exactly what that was. But I just knew it wasn't the best feeling. And I'm one of those, like, I go with my gut. It might take me a little while to, for my gut to convince me, but I just knew that it didn't seem right for me. And he was an amazing person to work with. And the reason I stayed those other 2 years is because I loved our players. I loved the staff I worked with. I mean, that's why we won 2 championships there, because we had good people, not just good players, but we had good people within our program. And it made it too hard to leave. But with that transitioning happening, I just took a second look and I was like, all right, I'm going to get out of coaching. And when I walked into his office to tell him that, he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I have no idea." I had no clue. I did not. And, as far as like my road to being an entrepreneur, it was an accident. I look up and all of a sudden people are calling me an entrepreneur. I'm like, who are you talking about? Like that's not me, but it's the best, I am. And I ended up, once I had told him, he told his wife, and he was like, I'm going to talk to her about it, because she worked for a health and wellness company. And I had already been taking these fruits and vegetables in a capsule. And I've been taking those for 5 years. I knew what it did. I knew what it did for me. And everybody in the world needs more fruits and vegetables in their life. So I decided to join the business with her and became a health coach. And then all of a sudden I became an author, and now I'm a speaker, and hey, here I am, an entrepreneur.
So it's almost like you took the leap and the journey unfolded itself, right?
Yep.
Okay. See, I love stories like that too, because that's very similar to my story, right? And something that you said at the very beginning that I really liked is that you were looking at other people to see what not to do. Like you knew you didn't want to do that. And I think that that's an overlooked, I don't want to call it like a trait, I guess, an overlooked thing that needs to be talked about, because you can learn just as much by looking at what you don't want to do or where you don't want to be. So I love that you touched on that. And whether that's, people who are actually in your role or family members, like I learned from watching my mom and dad. Hopefully they're not watching right now. They hate when I talk about this, but I love y'all. Okay. Um, they provided a great life for my brother and I, right? They really worked hard. But both of them at the end of the day, their job was strictly just for money. So that leaves you in a place where you come home exhausted, might need a
Mm-hmm.
glass of wine or something. And, there's nothing wrong with that. They come from a different era too. They didn't have the internet like I do to be able to build something.
Right.
But seeing that example let me know that I don't want to do something strictly just for money. There has to be a deeper purpose behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
also, whenever I was in a role where I was working just for money, I would look at the people around me, to your point, and be like, my boss or my manager looks miserable. So I'm here working to be in their shoes 5 to 10 years from now. That doesn't make any sense. I got to figure
Right.
something out. Um, you talked about this weight, like when you're, it's like your gut instinct, right? When you're in a position and you're doing something and it's not it. Um, there are a lot of people who feel that weight, but I guess they don't listen to it. They don't listen to their gut. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what advice can you give to people um, in that situation? Number one, how to identify it, like that you're experiencing that, but also like, what do you do from that point once you realize my gut is telling me I need to make a move? How do you actually build up the courage to go through with it?
So I would say, this kind of goes into the same thing whenever you're experiencing a health issue. Listen to your body. Your body is going to be your best storyteller. It knows what it needs and what it doesn't need. Excuse me. And if you're not happy, if you're dreading getting up in the morning and you're like, oh my God, I gotta go to work. Yeah. If you have, and I'm a three strikes type of person with a lot of different things in life. And if you wake up 3 days in a row and you're dreading going to work, you might need to start reevaluating stuff, and if you're getting physically ill for no reason, if you're having these nervous butterflies for no reason, like your body is going to tell you. You could be sleeping extra. There's so many different things that your body is going to tell you. But you got to listen. Don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. So many times we always want to ignore it. I mean, this happens with, personal relationships and everything. You want to believe, what you're, you really want to believe the good part, but your heart and your mind are really telling you something else. And, a lot of times hindsight 2020, obviously, but it's like, okay, you really probably saw that and you probably saw things. It's just a matter of putting it together. So yeah, I would just say that. And then once you figure out like, okay, well, maybe there is something, just start doing a little bit of exploring of, if you're have some different interests, start looking into those type of options and reach out to experts. Look at people who are already in that field. Now, don't compare yourself and say, oh my God, I don't think I can get there. Those people have put in, I'm sure, years and years of work to get where they are. But I always say, listen to the experts, because they're experts for a reason. They've been there, they've done that, they've made the mistakes, they've learned the lessons. And so why not learn from them? And maybe there's even people that are close to you that that are in that type of business. Maybe you always wanted to get into real estate. Call up somebody and see what their day-to-day life is like, see what it really is. And I would also say this, never make a rash decision based on emotions. But once you do figure out that something is there, say yes and just figure the details out later. That's basically what I did. I mean, and I am a planner. And that is the crazy part, that all of my close friends and family were surprised, and they're like, "What are you going to do?" And I was like, "I have no idea." Like, I'm a planner. I will do stuff spontaneously, but I like to have, like, once I decide, like, probably get into this. Once I decided to climb Kilimanjaro, like, I was like, all right, I got to make a plan. I got to figure all this out, how I'm going to do this. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it, but I ended up making a plan. I made the decision. I was like, all right, now I got to figure out the details. And that's not always a bad thing.
Right. Yeah. There's so much to unpack there. Like, you just dropped the gem after gem. I love how you talked about, first of all, the relationship. I've never heard that analogy before, where if you're in a relationship and there's red flags, don't ignore those red flags, and making that connection to how that's related to your career, because you are essentially in a relationship with your career or whatever you do for a living. You spend so much time doing it, you're in a relationship. That's a gem right there. I love that. I've never heard it put like that before compared to relationships. So thank you for sharing that. And then learning what other people are doing. This kind of leads to, I definitely want to talk about Kilimanjaro, but everything that led you up to this point, are there people that you learned from as you were in that planning phase of, okay, I took the leap, I don't know what I'm going to do, now I'm going to start mapping out something? Who did you look to? Who were some of the people that you were like, I like that, I like that? Who are the people that you pulled from as you were mapping out your plan?
That's the one part. So learning from the experts is something that I learned because I didn't do that. Because I honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't know, I knew that I wanted to be able to travel, right? I knew I wanted to be able to have a job that I could travel and go see the world. And joining the health coaching business that I was in, and joining the company with Juice Plus and signing on with them, the reason I knew a little bit about that is because my former head coach's wife, that's what she did. And really the only thing I knew about that was that she was able to stay home with both their boys. They had two young boys at the time. And she didn't have to, as long as she had the internet, she could work. And so I was like, okay, well, I can do that for now. It's going to be and I was thinking, okay, well, this will be great for me to be able to pay for all the travel that I want to do. I had enough money saved up, and I have a part in a family business that, my basic necessities are taken care of. But I'm still on that journey of learning, because when I decided to climb the mountain, I had never hiked anything else. I might go on a 3-mile hike or some nice little overlook, gorgeous. I live in the state of Arkansas, so we've got tons of beautiful trails and everything here. It's a gorgeous state. I'd never been higher than 10,000 feet at Sandia Peak in Albuquerque, and we drove that. So I was never a hiker. But once I made the decision that that's what I was going to do, you best believe I was on Google trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do, what all do I need, trying to prepare myself the best way possible. And I guess at that moment, that was really when I started learning about, this is literally just dawning on me. That's probably when it's like, okay, well, that's when I started to understand to listen to the experts. It was just on the mountain that it really just became clear that that's what I needed to do. And then when I got off, as far as, deciding to get into the speaking business, I sought out people, good old Google, and calling my friends, hey, this is what I think I'm going to do. Do you know anybody? Because I also like having that personal relationship where, even though I might not necessarily know you, but if I have a connection with somebody else, I feel a little bit better. And that's basically how I ended up with self-published in 30 days, because of a mutual friend of mine was a friend of Darren's. And lo and behold, Darren and I have like all different kinds of connections. And so that type of thing just, it makes it comfortable to go with. But yeah, listening to the expert, that was one of those that I learned the lesson. And it's one of those that, like, had I known that, so again, hindsight, had I known that several years ago, maybe things would be different. But then again, it wouldn't be, I wouldn't be where I am right now. So luckily it wasn't a really hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, I like that you touched on both sides of it because there's a time for trial and error and there's a time for planning. And I think knowing when to deploy one or the other is a skill, right?
Yeah.
And to your point, I kind of feel the same way throughout my journey. It's been almost like there were times where I had no idea what I was doing and people thought I was crazy. But I'm like, no, I know this for a fact. I'm supposed to be doing this. Even if I'm broke right now, even if I'm struggling, I know I'm supposed to be doing this. And then there's a time for coming up with a plan. Like now that I'm here, I'm going to map this out to get there. So I think that's really cool. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you too is because, like you said, you became an author, you became a speaker. Like, I think there's a level of selflessness there. Like you clearly wanted to help people because you could have just, kept traveling the world, making money through the business. Like you said, your friend who was in the business was working at home and, got to spend time, didn't have to clock in anywhere. You could have just kept doing that, but you were like, no, I want to collect these stories. I want to share my voice with people. I want to help people. So was it through your travels? Like, how did that come about where you were like, I want to help people. I want to share my stories.
Um, so that is honestly, that's the biggest thing that I do miss about coaching, college coaching, is being able to help those athletes and seeing them grow and transition. I mean, we get them as 18-year-old kids, and I'm sorry, they are kids. They might be legally adults, but they're still growing up, and then to see them leave when they're 22, 23 years old and the growth that they've seen, that's the biggest thing that I miss about coaching basketball. And I've always wanted to figure out a way that I could still impact athletes that way. And so when I went to Kilimanjaro, I had hundreds of people asking me about the story, and I loved it. I wanted to be able to tell everybody, but I also didn't want to have an awkward conversation with somebody I went to school with in third grade, and I hadn't talked to them since I was in third. So I did a Facebook Live, and I shared my story, my experience, showed some pictures. I actually did a safari after that, so I talked about that too, and just was very open, honest, told them exactly what happened. There was parts where I was not successful. I got really sick in the Serengeti, had to see a doctor in the middle of the Serengeti. It was hilarious now. I wasn't feeling great then, but just sharing those stories and being authentic and being me. Like I was, not hiding anything. And immediately after I shared all of that, I had people telling me that I needed to share it with more people, and they said I needed to speak about it. My first thought was like, really? Are you sure? And so that's where I reached out to some of my friends who were still in the college athletic world and who were in the positions of where basically the people who'd bring me in to speak, and ask them their opinion. Like, okay, is this something that you would bring? Is this a story that you would bring somebody in to speak on? And each one of them said yes, absolutely. And I was like, even though it's not, I know we're friends and everything, you can tell me the truth. But they said, no, like, this is something that athletes need to hear. And I was like, great, because I like being able to speak to athletes and hopefully impacting somebody. It really excited me again and gave me the opportunity to be able to be back in that athletic world.
Right. And the great part about it, Jodi, is that now you're able to impact them beyond sports. You know what I mean? You're able to go in there and not just as the coach, like, hey, I'm going to help you win games, but I'm going to help you in life. So
right.
That had to be really cool for it to all come full circle, for you to feel that call to want to give back and still coach. And then for you to step back and return to the world of athletics, but now as someone who's helping them, basically giving them information and sharing stories with them for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool. And obviously, you can still do virtual speaking engagements, but as far as in-person events, because of what's going on in the world right now, a little tough. But what kind of things do you have planned, like moving forward? I know you and I are working on some projects right now. We'll keep it hush hush until it's officially announced. But what things are you working on, and what can the world expect from Jodi Greve in the coming years?
Well, I've got so basically taking the lessons that I learned on Kilimanjaro and kind of narrowed them down, that that I think are really key. And I do workshops with athletic teams. It can be, just team specific, or it can be something that's, offered to all of the athletes, and going through figuring out a way for them to be able to conquer their own Kilimanjaro, because everybody has their own Kilimanjaro, whether it's they literally want to go climb Kilimanjaro, or it's a figurative mountain that they're trying to achieve in their athletic life, or in their personal life, their career, whatever it may be, and just working on those steps to get there, and not only to get to the top. I got to Uhuru Peak, which is the top of Kilimanjaro, but I also had to come back down, and I needed to make sure that coming down wasn't just a total crash and burn. And that's what's got to happen whenever you work towards your goals. You work towards your goals and you achieve it, and then it's like, okay, now what do I do? Well, what are you going to be able to do to sustain that? So working on those workshops, and working on a workbook to go along with that, because even though I'm really passionate about athletes, this is something that's really for everyone, no matter where they are in their life, any type of career doesn't matter, because as everything that we learn in sports, we can relate back to life in a heartbeat, into real life and stuff. So doing that, like you said, the virtual speaking engagements, and hopefully some one-on-one type of stuff, one-on-one type of coaching, to help people conquer their Kilimanjaro.
I love that. And not to get super woo-woo on you, but what I'm hearing is, like, through your travels, through everything that you've done, even the example of Kilimanjaro, you're exploring or pushing forward in the outer world and learning about your inner world as well. And I feel like through your messaging, that's what you get across to people, that it's not just about traveling and having a good time and, drinking a Mai Tai. It's about, like, I'm exploring the world while also simultaneously exploring my inner world, and I think that that's really cool that you do that. And
it's because I didn't intentionally set out to do that. It's just one of those things that's kind of happened. Like when I climbed Kilimanjaro, I was 40 years old. And whenever I was the first time I met the group of people that I was climbing with, and I said my age, I was like, but this isn't some kind of like midlife crisis type of thing. Like I'm not like, searching for myself or anything. But I mean, you hike a mountain, you're going to learn a thing or 10 about yourself. So
right. There's definitely some soul searching going on, even if it's unintentional. I feel you.
Exactly. And it was, I mean, maybe it was subconsciously intentional. I don't know, but I wanted to hike it for a long time. And I was like, dang it, I'm going to do it. So
right.
I did.
Yeah. So I know that you've coached a lot of athletes over the years, and obviously you're, speaking to not just athletes, but the world, at least speaking to everyone. It's funny because when I jumped off here for a second to call you to ask if you could jump on early, I saw a text from a guy that I'm working with, and it made me think, okay, at some point when we get back on here with Jodi, I wanted to make sure I asked you, what advice could you share to athletes right now? And of course, as we both know, this applies to more than just athletes, because there are a lot of people who are in transition, a lot of people who are lost or having to pivot in their lives. But what advice can you give to someone who is in a transition right now and trying to figure out what their next move is? How do they go about, basically carving out a new lane for themselves?
I would say, stay with it and don't give up on it. I know I am a very impatient person. And I've always known that, and I've always tried to work on that. I have gotten better, but it's still one of those things, like I want stuff to happen a little bit faster. And with as much pivot and is having to happen in the world right now, be patient with everything. Enjoy the entire journey that you're going on. Don't just look at the destination of where you're going to, but enjoy the entire journey, the good and the bad. I mean, there's going to be rough patches, but stay patient with it and stay the course, because when you're when you're doing the right things, reaching out to those experts, when you're doing the research on things you possibly might want to do, or if you've already narrowed down your lane to what you do want to do, and stick with that and just keep doing your research and stay with it. Be persistent about it. And, you know, the last year really taught us that stuff is not going to happen fast. You've got to be patient with how things are happening. Be ready for it. And this also happens a lot of times too. You know, it takes real slow. And then all of a sudden, bam, stuff just takes off 100 miles an hour. Well, you got to be ready to when that happens, but enjoy that journey and keep trusting yourself. And as long as you have that feeling like you were saying earlier, like this is what you want to do, then be good with that and stick with it. Cause I think a lot of times, you know, you obviously you got to make sure that you're able to, what's the term I'm looking for? You still got to make sure that you're making a living and, you know, keeping a roof over your head, keeping your mouth fed or whatever. But be willing to make a few of those sacrifices, to get to that ultimate destination. And I promise you, if you enjoy that journey while you're on it, especially if it's something that you love and you're passionate about it, when you reach that final, that destination, man, that celebration is going to be better than you could have ever imagined.
That's some strong advice right there. I love how you're talking about, like, okay, sometimes it starts out, well, most of the time it starts out very slow, nothing's happening. You keep chipping away for a few years, and then boom, everything takes off. And like you said, you got to be ready for that too, because that is a new world in and of itself. I think they say it takes like 3 to 5 years for the average business to really get going, even to start being profitable at a certain point. So it actually makes me think of another question I wanted to ask you, because a lot of people might be listening to this or, you know, watching this and like, well, that's great, Jodi, that you retired from your coaching career, went off to have this beautiful life and you travel the world and speak and all that. But can you give some advice to the people out there who are like, hey, you know what? I think I want to build something. I think I want to become an entrepreneur and I want to break out of the typical path and go do something on my own and give it a shot. Can you give some advice to those aspiring entrepreneurs out there? What would you tell those people if they're thinking about getting started or following in your footsteps in some way?
Find one of those experts and reach out to them. It just, you'd be really surprised at the people that do respond. I mean, there's going to be a lot of no's. Embrace the no's. Cause eventually there's going to be somebody that says yes. But I know I don't know how many times I've said this earlier already, but just reach out to people. That the internet is full of so much information, and there's people that you can find in all different types of areas of entrepreneurship, because there are so many different avenues that you can take with it. But I would say, you know, try and narrow down, you know, a few lanes, and just start reaching out to people. And if you are, you know, if it's somebody that's coming out of college, especially with athletes have so many resources available to you. Use them. Use them. The university is, you know, they're giving you the opportunity to play the sport that you love and that you're good at. And, you know, there's so many opportunities for you to be able to use them back. And I used to tell my athletes all the time, it's up to you to be able to use those resources. You know, they can't force it on you. But if you're an athlete still in college, go talk to your student advisor, you know, your academic advisor. I know a lot of the bigger schools have more programs set in place for that kind of stuff, but take advantage of it. But the internet is also full of so much free information that you can basically put out a Google search on any little subject, and it's going to take some time, but do the research. But I say go for it, and kind of like I did, just say yes and figure out the details later. They'll
Right.
eventually fall into place.
Yes, indeed. I love that. And to your point, there are so many people, like you said, who are willing to help. It just takes being able to reach out to people. Like I always tell people, if once they're clear on what they want to do, and they're in that phase where they're starting to reach out to people who could potentially help bring them up or doing something similar, like you said, like if you reach out to 100 people and one person responds and is willing to essentially take you under their wing and show you how they got to where they got to, sending out those 100 messages, it's worth it. But most people, because of pride or whatever else, they think it won't work. They won't send out those 100 messages. And because of that, they don't build those connections and they end up stuck. And I love, sorry, go ahead.
Just kind of what that is. One of the other big lessons that I learned on the mountain is don't be afraid to ask for help. And like what you said is like not having you can't have the pride. Look, you can't, I don't know anybody who's been able to do everything in their life 100% on their own. It just does not happen. You start a business, you start growing, then you have to bring people in. You got to have helpers. There's nobody that has been able to do it solely on their own. They might think they might have had the idea by themselves, but in order for all of it to fall through, you've got to have help. And if you're in trouble with anything, if you're feeling a certain type of way, ask for help. Put the pride aside and just ask for the help. Because like you said, you have one person that says yes. All you need is one yes. You don't need 100 no's. I used to tell athletes whenever, they're getting all these scholarship offers, that's great that you've got 50 different offers. You can only go to one school. You can only accept one of those scholarships. So all you need is that one person to tell you yes, and you're good.
That's what I'm talking about. See, Jodi, this is why I asked you, I think earlier in the week, I was like, before we get on here, do you want me to interview you or do you want to just give a keynote? Because you're going into keynote mode right now. And I just want to let you keep going and not even ask any questions. So I want to be respectful of your time. You definitely jumped on here early. Before we start to close this thing out, is there any last words you want to share with the people? Any advice to anybody listening right now? Whatever's on your heart, feel free to share.
I would say just for them to go with their heart, even if people tell you that it's crazy, even if people doubt you, if you believe in your heart that you are meant to do something, go for it. Go out and ask the experts. Don't be afraid to ask for help because you're going to need it along the way. And it's okay. Everybody needs help. I don't care what they tell you. They need help. Enjoy the entire journey and not just the destination, because the people that you meet along the way are going to affect your life. And like you were saying earlier, whether it's, to figure out how you do want to do something or how you don't want to do something, and enjoy that and appreciate them and let them know how you appreciate them, because I would not have made it up that mountain. And I am not even joking. If it was not for one of our CEOs, one of our leaders, his name is Moses. I don't know if I would have made it up without him and one of the other girls in particular, Jessica, just because of what they did for me, just verbally, and the encouragement they were giving. They didn't physically have to do anything, but just for them being there. And so I made sure that I was thanking them all the time so that they understood the appreciation that I had for them. And so if you are taking this journey, let people know how much that you do appreciate them, because you never know what that can end up turning into from them. So appreciate the people that are there, go with your heart, enjoy the journey, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
You can go ahead and drop the mic on that one, Jodi. There it is, folks. There it is. Please tell people before we wrap up how they can get in touch with you. I know they call you Jodi the Gypsy because you're constantly traveling the world, inspiring people. But how can people keep up with your journey and just get in touch with you?
So Instagram, I am Instagram and Facebook, I am Jodi the Gypsy. And that is also my website, is jodithegypsy.com. And DMing me on Instagram is a great way, or you can email me at Jodi the Gypsy. And Jodi is spelled with an I. Obviously, my name's on the screen. So, but yeah, Jodi the Gypsy on all of that. So, and I also have. Here's the other thing that I would like to let you know. I have about 11 years ago now. So in 2010, I started texting texting a group of now former players a motivational quote every day. Some of them were injured. Some of them were just in a bad play, you know. So I started sending a motivational text every day, and it's kind of grown since then. And now if you text the word gypsy, is there a way I can put it on the screen or no? Maybe they can just hear it. It's on, I believe it's on my website too, but if you text 479-469-1677 and you text the word gypsy to that, you'll get a daily motivational quote each morning. And some of them are, you know, a traditional motivational quote. Some of them are from famous figures. Some of them are just a swift kick in the rear to get you to get moving.
That's what I'm talking about.
Cell phone, like the cell phone companies, we used to have a 5-digit code that you could text, but now the way that cell phone companies, they've changed the rules. You can no longer. Oh, perfect. Thank you.
There it is. Thank you, Dana.
Yes, but they no longer, they make you have the full phone number, and you won't get phone calls or anything if you text it or whatnot. But yeah, now they make us use. Or wait, it's 479-469.
479-469-1677.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. That's really. I'm glad you got that. I'm gonna have to send you a text afterwards too, so I can get that swift kick in the rear from you every now and then. You know.
Look, sometimes because I obviously I get it too. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's go.
Right. I love that. Well, Jodi, thank you again for coming on and sharing. This has been great. Thank you for jumping on early ahead of time. And there it is. There we go.
Yes.
That's the right number, right, Jodi?
Yes. 469. Yep. Perfect.
Okay. As we begin to close out, everybody, please get that number down. Take a screenshot, write it down, send Jodi a text. Get your swift kick, folks. You know, make sure you stay on task. Stay on task, handle your business. But I just want to say thank you. I'm really glad that you and I got connected, and you know, so much value has come from it. Obviously, you came on here and dropped a lot of value today, but even just personally, getting to know you and having conversations with you has brought tremendous value to my life. And I feel like we just met, but we're just getting started in terms of all the projects we're going to be working on together when it comes to athletes and entrepreneurship and travel and all that good stuff. So, sending you my gratitude and my appreciation for everything you do, for the woman that you are, and for all the value that you share with everybody. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
All right, you too, Jodi. Bye, everybody.